We'll do American Bankers Association's webinar on Pentagra's 401k Plan of the Future is available today. I'm Steve Polestock, and I work in the Alliance Relations area here at the ABA. We'll get to in just a moment on this program discussing the 401k Plan of the Future is available today. But before we begin the program, let me run through some administrative issues. This webinar will run approximately 40 minutes. If you have any questions at any point, please send them using the Q&A message area. Time after the presentation for a question and answer session. Send a question in the meeting window or Q&A window. Then message in the Q&A box, and please send it to both host and presenter. We'll try to answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. If we can't answer all your questions, we'll get back to you after the webinar is ended. I'd also like to note that Pentegra Retirement Services delivers retirement plan solutions with the highest level of integrity and offers a full spectrum of retirement programs for community banks. Pentegra's qualified retirement plan solutions have earned the endorsement of the ABA through the Corporate American Banking as well as bank trade organizations nationwide. It's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Richard Rouser. Rouser is a Senior Vice President of Client Services at Pentegra. Receives Pentegra's consulting, marketing, and communications, BOLI, and non-qualified plan sales, and actuarial and technical service groups. He joined the organization in 1997 and has more than 3 years of experience in the retirement benefits field. His extensive knowledge of the retirement plan industry includes a unique mix of small company and Fortune 500 level consulting work, as well as strategic product development. His the retirement plan marketplace and insights in benefit plan design and customer needs have been instrumental in not only expanding Pentegra's product lineup and customer base, but in helping clients nationwide design effective benefits and compensation strategies. He's a frequent speaker on retirement benefit topics. He's a qualified pension consultant, a qualified pension administrator, a qualified 401k administrator, and a member of the American Society of Pension Professional and Actuaries. He holds an MBA in Finance from Fairleigh Dickinson University and a BA in Economics and Business Administration from Ursinus College. With that, I would like to turn the floor to Rich for his presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction this afternoon, and thanks to everybody else joining the conference call today. The topic today is the pay plan of the future, and really what I mean by that is what is the best practice? What do we feel the best practice is for 401k plan design? And really, you know, the question is, what are we trying to accomplish? And what we're trying to accomplish is provide your participants with retirement success, or retirement readiness success is really the end goal. In this industry, we've seen many clients kind of trend away from the defined benefit type of program. More and more organizations in this day and age are relying on a 401k plan as one of the sole retirement vehicles for their participants and their employees. So really, now is the time to start to think about how do we design those plans most effectively, how do we design them to get maximum participation, how do we get your participants to be fully engaged in terms of creating retirement success for the long run. So really, it's all about retirement readiness. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is we did a Harris poll earlier. Actually, this one was in 2014, and we're asking, whether or not their 401k plan is going to be able to provide them with enough income in retirement. And about 65% of those that we polled don't believe that they'll be able to get enough retirement success or retirement readiness from their 401k plan. So, you know, what does that really mean in terms of measuring success? And we drive success. And really, one of the things that we talk about all the time is in replacement ratios, and how do you generate the level of income you need in retirement to live the lifestyle you think you're going to need or want in retirement without making adjustments to that lifestyle. Now, again, a lot of folks start to think through the process of retirement and think budgeting and strategy and all that, and some of them will actually move to lower cost of living areas. Some of them will stay exactly where they are. So, the answer to this question really is unique based upon each individual. what are the metrics that drive success? Well, some of those success metrics are, everything from the savings rate to the investment strategy to are people increasing their savings rate over time? And those are all key components to retirement readiness and retirement success. So we're going to talk a lot about many of these components this afternoon and kind of drive through it. But actually, before I get into the next couple of steps here, Steve, I'd like to put up a polling question or two. Maybe if you can just bring up the first polling question for us. First question we have this afternoon is, do you consider your 401k to be a primary source of retirement income? So if you folks can just click that yes or no, we'll just tally the results here and get some real-time results for everybody and report back and see if the findings among this group are comparable to what we've seen in the industry. A couple of seconds left on the poll, and Steve, I don't know if you can close it, and we'll try to get the results here.
Okay, it's closed. Do you see the, I'll put the poll results up there.
Yep. We had 20% said yes, nobody said no, and about 8% of the group didn't answer. From the results when we did a survey of thousands of people nationwide, and again, there was about 65% of the folks nationwide who said that would be the case. They wouldn't necessarily be able to get enough income from the retirement plan. So we'll move on to progressive plan design. We're going to get into a discussion of some of the automated features that can be built into the plan. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a little bit of background in terms of how we came up with the solutions to plan design. And it was really the genesis of some generational focus groups that we conducted in the tail end of 2013 and early part of 2014. Sat down with groups of workers of every generation, and we talked about work-life balance. We talked about what employees expect from their employer. We talked about how people like to work, how they like to communicate, what they think, so on and so forth. And part of the discussion really delved into 401k plans and retirement plans and what do the various generations of employees expect from their employer. By and large, we found that 80% of younger employees actually look to their employer for help and for guidance and for recommendations in terms of everything from savings rate to, they invest their money and how should they be strategizing and using their 401k plan to their best advantage over their working career. When we looked at segments of the older generations of workers, by and large, about 70% of them said, we really don't necessarily look to our employer for that kind of help and guidance, and we kind of have it figured out. They know how much to save, and they pretty much know how to invest the money, or at least, how they think they want to go about doing that. So, and we found younger employees wanting and needing the help. Older employees, by and large, said, well, we don't really necessarily need the help. We've been in a 401k type plan for decades, and we kind of get was the answer. So the next level of discussion that we had with those intergenerational groups was, well, if your employer took action to automate some of the features of the plan, and I'll, some of them are everything from automatically enrolling new hires into the plan, and automatically deferring from their pay 6% of salary, something on that order, automatically setting up an automatic escalation of their contribution over time. For example, that to go up by 1% a year for the next couple of years, that kind of thing, and automatically defaulting them into, whether it's a managed fund or a target retirement date type fund, or, basically a fund or an investment landscape that would best suit that typical participant in that typical age bracket. So, if your employer had taken that kind of action to automate a lot of the features of the plan, would they embrace that, or would they be somehow put off by that? We found only about 1% of the younger generations would be somehow put off by that, and upwards of 99% were embracing that kind of a concept. Again, looked at the older groups of employees, we found by and large it didn't necessarily bother them that they had automated the features, but a bigger margin, maybe upwards of 8 to 10%, that said, well, yeah, it feels a little bit intrusive, right? So once we kind of pulled the groups, kind of we said, well, let me just explain how this would work in reality with automated features. And the bottom line on incorporating automated features into a 401k plan is that every individual that an automated feature was offered to would be able to opt out of any one or more of the automated features, right? So that's really the key here, communicating and over-communicating to make sure that nobody is defaulted into an arrangement that they didn't know about, right? So if we over-communicate, you know, that's kind of probably the single biggest, I won't even say challenge, but single biggest thing we need to make sure we do when we have automated features in the plan. And again, if you think about what you need to do as a plan sponsor, in our view, it's help people who need the help. You know, people who are self-sufficient, who have figured out, who know how to do it, they necessarily need the help, and that's perfectly fine, and that's why most 401k plans are built in a rather flexible manner. But those who do need and want the help, what you want to do is try to do an automated plan design or series of plan design features that get, you know, the bang for the buck and basically get those people off on the right path and set in the right direction. So with that said, we're gonna walk through, you know, the different of progressive design. And by the way, when we started this initiative to look at this, benchmarked everything from mega plans to medium-sized plans to small plans to micro plans, right? So we wanted to take a look at the entire landscape of sponsors. We wanted to take a look at what they were doing. We wanted to identify trends in the industry. You know, try to use that to help our plan sponsors and our clients do the right thing for their employees. So we created a series, and we've actually got a series of 3, I call it thought leadership pieces. We call it Pentegra Smart Path. Plan design is kind of the first segment. Segments that we won't necessarily talk about today is a Smart Path version for the participant level, and that's designed to appeal to a participant who may need to take action because maybe their employer has not adopted many of the automated features that we'll talk about this afternoon. And the third level of the Smart Path series is really we call it distribution path, which is much more critical for people who are close to retirement age to get them to fully understand and focus on the various distribution options and flexibilities that are built into many of the 401k plans that we provide services to today. So again, because I think there's a whole host of distribution options and flexibilities that the average participant really just isn't aware of, because the focus typically during their working career is, you know, asset accumulation. How do I save more money and create more in my, you know, build a larger 401k account balance? They're not necessarily focused on how do I distribute that money to myself over my lifetime. Okay, so with that said, we're going to jump into some of the plan provision features. And one of the first ones that we come up with is make it easy for participants to get into the plan and to join the plan. So one of the first things we say is, you know, make it easy. Put a minimal service requirement to join the plan. Typical recommendation is to do, you know, an entry date anywhere from 1 to 3 months after becoming employed by the company, and allow them to participate in the plan. Now, one thing I want to tell everybody up front is, even though you might utilize and make your eligibility requirement more flexible, right, or let them in earlier, you don't necessarily have to provide employer contributions or employer matching contributions or things of that nature early on. If it's the philosophy of the bank or the organization to make them wait a year, well, then so be it, to get a matching contribution. But in this day and age, the way testing works on 401k plans, there is no reason to exclude anybody more than a month or 2 or 3 in terms of making them eligible and giving them the ability to at least save their own money or salary through a 401k type plan. So we've got some statistics here. You know, if you look at all plans who have either no eligibility, basically an immediate eligibility requirement, or even up to 3 months, you know, it's by, you look at the large plans, it's by and large most of them. If you look at all plans, it's about 77%, right? But what I see on this table is the smaller the company, right, the less likely they are to have more liberal end dates or eligibility requirements. And the one thing we are stressing to everybody that we do business with, all of our clients, is, you know what, clients to design a plan, A, that works for them, and B, suits the needs of their plan participants, and C, is really kind of ahead of the curve in terms of plan design. I don't want any client to pick up in 3 years or 5 years and say, wow, how come I don't have that, plan design that every new plan is adopting these days. So again, even though the trends say smaller companies don't necessarily accelerate eligibility or participation rights in the plan, I'm strongly suggesting that you take another look at that. Again, statistically, what we find is employees, who join plans early are more likely to stay for the long run and not necessarily voluntarily turn over. So in the long run, I think it actually helps reduce some of the cost of turnover of employees in general. Another issue to kind of keep an eye on, or plan design provision, is a vesting schedule, right? Vesting simply means that participants own something or have a right to something. Of course, in a 401k plan, they always have, they're 100% fully vested in their own contributions in their own account balance. So that's easy. But in terms of employer contributions, employer matching contributions, and other types of contributions to the plan, you can stretch out vesting on either a cliff schedule, potentially up to a 3-year cliff, meaning no vesting until a 3-year period, through service that is, and potentially on a graded schedule, up to grading up over a period of up to 6 years, right? What we find, again, is that more liberal vesting schedules, meaning giving them rights to the full contribution, is obviously beneficial to the participant, to the employee, but it kind of, induces that employee and basically says, hey, even though the vesting schedule may be short, we want to encourage you to step up and participate in this plan. Because, again, some of the detriments of long vesting schedule, making people wait almost too long, is that people don't step up and contribute, and they may go, a year, 2 or 3 without contributing because they don't really believe they're going to get the employer contribution or that it's going to stick with them, and those tied into it. So again, among our bank clients in particular, we see about 50% of them being 100% immediate vesting schedules. So it's a significant portion. It's actually ahead of, the chart I've got up on the screen here is plans of all types, not necessarily just financial institutions, but it's all of corporate America. So corporate America tends to lag a little bit in terms of what I see in the financial institutions segment of the marketplace. So if you've got a long vesting schedule, one thing to maybe look at is maybe improving that or accelerating it somewhat, if not already there. The next topic we've got is a discussion of auto-enrollment, automatic enrollment in the plan, and there's really kind of 2 versions of this. What I'm getting to on this slide is this would apply to a new hire. In other words, everybody who's new to the plan, are automatically enrolling them in the plan. Now, we've got, right now, since we've been, kind of talking to all of our clients about all of these smart plan design features, over a little 20% of our client base has moved into this type of an environment. I think it's pretty much 100% of the takeover business that we get, plans to transition over us that are using this kind of a feature. Because we're having that discussion with them on the front end, and they're changing from one vendor to another, and it's almost like an easier thing to do at that point. Auto enrollment basically says, look, we give the new hires description of how the plan works. We make them aware of how the plan works. We tell them exactly what's going to happen. More and more of our clients are auto-enrolling their participants at a higher initial contribution rate. That in just a moment on the next slide and explain that more thoroughly. But again, if you look at the stats here, small plans, meaning anywhere from 1 to 49 participants, right? We don't see very, very many employers using this. And part of that is the attitude, right, of, hey, I don't really want to step on my employees' toes, right? Now, if you look at larger plans, 1,000 participants and above, it's in a range of over 6% of new hires are being automatically enrolled. So your plans tend to use it for a couple of reasons. Number one, how do they communicate with so many new people all at once? And this is an easier way to do it. But what we see in the smaller plan size, under 200 employees, is, senior management doesn't necessarily want to do this. Now, again, when I go to the focus groups that we ran back in late 2013 and 14, it was older generations who had less of a need for these automated features. So the challenge I think that we all have is, how do I get decision makers, right? How do we all get the decision makers who tend to be a bit older to understand the need to provide these automated features for the younger generations who, by our surveys are looking for this kind of help and they want and need this kind of help. So part of it is kind of a philosophical discussion of what do we need to do to help 80% of the people who need and want the help. So anyway, the stats are showing us some trends. These stats are showing us where things are going to be going within the next 2 to 5 years. Most plans are going to be adopting these features. And I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion now in terms of, gee, if you're not using these features, why don't we come into the plan? Hey, I think I'd like to do another polling question, but I can skip number 2. I'm already past that. Can you do the third polling question? We have the question up here. If you're using automatic enrollment, what is your default savings rate? So we're going to keep this open for about 20 seconds. A is not using auto enrollment. Question, the response is, yeah, the initial savings rate is 1 to 3% of salary is the default rate. C, 3% but less than 6, and D is more than 6%. So the question, are you using this or not? And if you are using it, do you know what the default savings rate is for the new hires, new participants who come into the plan? Wait just a couple of seconds. Hopefully we'll close this in,
Rich?
I don't see it yet.
I don't know what the issue is. I'm sorry, but it says it's 100% on A.
So, all right, thank you. Yeah, I don't see the results popping up on my screen, but 100% on A, basically saying of the respondents, nobody's using an automatic enrollment feature. Okay, it's interesting. Again, we've got literally 100% of all of our new clients using it, and 20% is the number of the clients in here for a while. Thank you, though. All right, on to the next slide. In terms of automatic enrollment, there are a couple ways to design it. The most typical scenario is that a plan who's adopted auto enrollment automatically defaults those new hires to a 3% salary savings rate, 3% salary deferral, right? And part of that has been driven by the initial legislative initiative, right, that kind of said that this type of plan design was okay and embraced, right, from safe harbor standpoint, so on and so forth. And, part of the legalese of this is, well, if you're going to have a safe harbor plan that's using this feature, you have a deferral rate of at least 3% of pay. So what we found is, by and large, those employers in the industry-wide, have adopted auto enrollment or defaulting in at 3% of pay. Our recommendation, though, is to default participants in at 6% of pay. Again, part of it is philosophical. Part of it is, why wouldn't we try to do the best thing for the individual who, by the way, in our experience, when we, kind of enroll participants the old way, which is to go out and do meetings with employees and tell them how the plan works, finally get 90% of the people to join the plan. On average, those people are deferring in the neighborhood of 5 to 6% of salary. So if 90% of your people, new people, would otherwise sign up at a 5 or 6% of pay rate, I want to sell them short by automatically enrolling them at only 3% of pay. Again, everything here is predicated upon communication, letting new hires know exactly what's going to happen, setting expectations that, hey, you're going to be automatically enrolled in our 401k, your salary savings rate will be 6% of pay, and by the way, if you enroll at a lower rate or higher rate, just, know how to do that, and we can do that electronically through some of the interfaces that we have. So, it's pretty easy to do, and again, I think you're meeting the needs of 80 or 90% of the people anyway if you auto-enroll them at 6% of pay, because, again, we feel that what they would have done in our experience, that's what they would have signed up for anyway on their own. So, again, we're trying to bring through some best practices, some ideas in terms of how to design a plan and how not to fall into a trap of, well, gee, the industry is enrolling at 3% is the most popular figure. That's not necessarily the right thing to do, because I think, I don't necessarily everybody has thought it through, and I think they kind of took the minimum threshold, if you know what I mean. So again, our idea is enroll at a higher rate. The next concept I want to talk about is automatically escalating or increasing contributions over time. Now, this is a feature we've had in our plans for some time on a voluntary basis, right? Individual participants can go into their website and basically say, hey, please auto-escalate, increase my contribution by 1 or 2% a year on an annual basis. And we have interfaces that, take it, from the participant website and feed that back to the payroll of the employer and the plan sponsors. So, an automated process, which is great, and it helps that participant do what we recommend most participants should be doing over time, is increasing your salary savings periodically as time goes on. Again, part of the goal is to get the typical participant to save on the order of 10 to 15% of pay a year, including employer contribution and employer match. I'm not going to necessarily get into that side of it right now, but in order to have a 401k plan be a primary retirement vehicle long term, you need savings rates on the order of 10 to 15% of salary. So anyway, this auto-escalation feature is a way to help employees get there. Again, you can see the numbers. The larger plans are more, trend is that larger plans have it, while smaller plans are not necessarily there yet. But then just kind of looking into the future, most plans are going to have this feature in 2 to 5 years. We see it coming. It's a trend as it becomes more known, and as more and more plan sponsors recognize that they need to do, in my view, the right thing for 80% of their employees who need and want this kind of help. This is one way to help them do that. And again, it's a feature that I could opt out of if I don't want to use this feature as an individual. If I'm okay with auto-enrolling at 6% of pay, I don't have to have auto-escalation at 1%. I could please make it 0% or please make it 2% or 3%, something like that. So again, flexibility at the participant level, communication at the participant level, those are both keys to making all of this work in the long run. In terms of matching contributions, this is an area where we see good designs out there, and we see some designs that are not necessarily so good. So an example of a reasonably good design is to provide a matching contribution on function of 6% of salary. In other words, if I'm going to do dollar for dollar on 6% of pay, or even 50 cents on the dollar on 6% of pay, the concept here is this percent bogey is intended to get most participants to save at least that amount. So if I'm saving 6% of pay, employers giving me 50 cents on the dollar match, I'd end up with a 9% of pay contribution, which is, again, getting pretty close to that 10% threshold that we like to see most people at. Some of the plans that are not so great are matches that we see companies with matches of on 3% of salary. And I'm getting the same 3% match that I would get under a 50% on 6 match, but I'm not really challenging my employees to step up and make the additional contributions, which is going to benefit them in the long run, is the bottom line. So I do like to see a match geared around at least 6% of pay. There are some interesting matches that you can do to kind of do a stretch match on amounts above that. We just always have to be a little bit careful about some of the non-discrimination rules in terms of how they work. Of course, if you're a safe harbor 401k plan, right, for testing purposes, you really can't go beyond a 6% matching threshold. But again, when we see matches, we've seen clients and plans with matches of 200% on 3% of pay, which would be similar in terms of budgetary outlay of 100 on 6 match. So the whole idea, in particular, if your company's match, if your bank's match is the only retirement plan vehicle for an employee, if there's a defined benefit plan, no employee stock ownership plan, I think it's crucial to try to, take a look periodically at all of these design elements and, potentially use them to make them more effective for the participants in the long run. Okay. Again, here's some stats on safe harbor matching formulas. As I mentioned again a minute ago, the different rules that apply to safe harbor matches, and you can see by and large more of the small employers are using this type of a match, and those are the plans that sometimes need more help in terms of safe harbor plan design. But again, over 84%. I should say it this way, 84% of plans are using a traditional match, and others are using a safe harbor match coupled with auto-enrollment. So again, it's another way to look at designing a plan and trying to make it more effective given your individual circumstances of that plan. The next topic I want to talk about is Roth 401 features. See every single plan out there with a Roth feature these days. I think if you don't have a Roth feature, you should look at adding it. It really is just giving your participants more flexibility in terms of the types of contributions they can make to the plan. Our 401k plan started out with the salary deferral only type of contribution. Roth added quite a few years ago at this point in terms of enabling employees to make contributions to the 401k on an after-tax basis. But actually what happens is, as long as that money's been in there long enough and they're age 59 and a half, that money can come out, the earnings on the money can come out tax-free. So in my mind, there is a huge potential tax arbitrage, in particular for employees who are early in their careers, who may not be earning a lot of money right now, who may be in very, very low or somewhat lower tax brackets, where they're going to be in higher tax brackets undoubtedly down the road. So this arbitrage on a Roth IRA type, or a Roth 401k type contribution is enormous, is the bottom line. So again, if you don't have a Roth feature available in the plan, I strongly suggest you take a look at doing it. Most record keepers these days, I can't think of anybody who chooses the plan differently or charges more just to have that feature. Even from a payroll standpoint, I don't see it as an issue. There's kind of a different bucket that goes in the payroll system that enables you to make those tax deductions or Roth contributions pretty effectively, even side by side with a participant who also might be making pre-tax contributions to the plan. What I want to put out there is, we call it limiting plan leakage, and what I mean by that is leakage in a 401k plan means scenarios where participants are using the money well before retirement years. So a couple of features come to mind, and we'll discuss a little bit of the pros and cons of having those features. A loan feature is one aspect of plan leakage, where a participant might take a loan from the plan, and the point is, when they take a loan, they're taking it out of one or more of their investment accounts under the 401k plan. They're, putting themselves in a position of what I call opportunity cost, meaning, if their money was, in investment funds that over the long run would have given, a decent rate of return, they're kind of giving up that opportunity for that additional return, and they're simply paying themselves back interest at probably prime rate plus 1 percentage point, a very low long-term earnings rate. The other thing that we see in some 401k plans that have almost no limit to the number of loans, we see people with upwards of 5+ loans outstanding at a time. In other words, they loan year by year by year by year, and they just have perpetual loans outstanding. And again, what that means is it's really a drain on the long-term savings aspects that they're going to be able to provide for themselves. So one recommendation or one discussion we have with our clients is, should we allow unlimited loans, or should we be limiting loans to maybe 1 or 2 outstanding at any one point in time? And providing a loan feature in this type of plan, I think it's critical to allow a loan. It is, if not impossible, to explain to a very young employee, hey, you're going to be potentially in this plan for 40 years, and guess what? All the money you're saving and the money we're matching, you can touch any of it ever until you're 65 or until you quit or, the bank, that sort of thing. So that's a very not conversation. So having one or two loans outstanding at any one time is I think, good practice plan design. Having unlimited loans or even one loan a year, I think, is a little bit excessive. You want the loan feature to be available in the plan to give people flexibility when they need it, but hopefully, you design it in such a way that they can't, overuse it and therefore, totally detract from their retirement results. That the plan design is investments and the funds, and how do we make the investment landscape, I'd say, effective, number one, but to use, user friendly. And one aspect of this is how many investment are you going to actually have on your platform? Fortunately, we do see plans out there that more than one fund in each asset class, which lends to a tremendous amount of confusion at the participant level. So we like to say, less is more when it comes to investments, but you need to make sure you're covering enough of the asset classes that are available there. By our definition of asset classes, anywhere from 6 or 7 or 8 different asset classes that make sense to provide in a 401k plan. And QDIA's qualified default investment arrangements, it should be a one-fund choice. I mean, target date funds are a great match for that. There are managed accounts that can also be used on it, that sort of thing. So again, I would take a look at that, make it easy, make it simple, make it straightforward. This is something you would potentially do for your active employees, where you periodically re-enroll everybody, basically potentially default them into, a 6% of pay savings rate if need be, auto-escalate their contributions over time, potentially reallocate their existing funds into a managed fund or a target date fund. Again, the whole purpose of this re-enrollment process is to give them an opportunity to kind of rethink what they're doing, not necessarily to change what they're doing, but simply rethink it and have them take another look at it. And we tend to see some pretty good results when we go through a re-enrollment process. Outsourcing some of the fiduciary responsibilities, again, can take some of the burdens off of the plan sponsor. Outsourcing that to somebody who's qualified to provide those services can take a lot of the issues off the table. So again, design depends upon corporate culture, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It depends on how much help your service provider can give you in terms of positioning you properly for this, this result. But I think it's important to look at this periodically, take a look at some of the best practices in the industry, and potentially, build them into your program. So, service provider, ask for some help in terms of how you might want to go about that. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments that anybody might have.
Sure. A couple questions came in, and I would like to just make a quick note that I will distribute the slide deck to all the attendees tomorrow morning, so you can look for that tomorrow morning. First question in is, how much extra administrative work is it to add a SmartPath strategy to our plan?
Sure. There's two sides to the administrative work. One is, do we need to amend the plan to provide some of the features? The answer is yes, and that's something we or your service provider would do. The other side of it is, I don't think it's a lot of work to adopt these features. The one thing is you have to change some of your procedures, that's all, because a lot of the automated features, flowing through your service provider back to you, the employer. So it'd be just simply a function of changing some of the internal procedures to make this happen. For example, you're no longer handing out enrollment material. We're enrolling people online, that sort of thing. So there's just a different means of interacting. And, what we do is make it as easy as possible for all of our clients to make that transition and to help them through the process.
Okay, thank you. Up is, what can we receive with education about this new type of program?
Sure. Yeah, two levels of education. In terms of, helping senior management through decision-making process, that's something we do all the time, and we can kind of help them with the pros and the cons and how it work, and we've had a lot of those conversations, and, if it is, some of our folks will make some of the changes this year and maybe a few more a year down the road. At the participant level, again, that's an area where we excel in terms of helping communicate, in terms of, providing the appropriate communication material, customized communication material. And the other thing is, we recognize that different folks like to communicate in different ways, whether it's electronically or via paper, that sort of thing. So, again, our resources are pretty flexible in terms of helping with that process.
We currently stand about 3 questions to go. This question up is, has Pentegra experienced pushback or resistance from participants that have gone from self-serve decision to a full-service automated type program?
The answer really is no, and that's because of the communication campaign that's put into the process, Steve. Basically, we over-communicate what is happening or what will be happening on the automated features, and we sure they know that they can opt out of one or more of the features. So that's actually worked very, very, very well.
Option up is, how can you educate or convince senior management to implement of a matching contribution?
Oh, matching contribution. Well, real part of that, I think, is a function of, when you talk to senior management, we're talking about budget, right? I mean, do we have the budget for this? So how do we build that budget, and how do we make sure we understand how predictable that amount is going to be, right? So part of it is a discussion on budget, number one. Then number two, it's really, what's the benefit of the matching contribution? What are we going to accomplish with that, right? We're going to increase participation rates. If it's a smaller plan that's having testing issues, right, increasing participation rates can actually help highly compensated and or senior management, right, defer what they really want to defer. They'd be less restricted in the plan. Again, a function of budget, a function of the benefit, a function of potentially benchmarking your plan to other plans in your region, in your area. So again, banks and financial institutions, that's an area where we've got a lot of data, a lot of information. So we know what most banks are doing in terms of plan structure, plan design, how they compare to their peers. So we can always be very helpful with that process.
Okay, and currently the last question. What if a participant does not want to take part in the full-service 401k option? Do they have a choice?
And kind of touched on that one with some of the other dialogue, right? We're always giving participants flexibility to opt out of one or more of the automated features, and in premises we're over-communicating on the front end to sure we don't end up with participants who say, hey, I don't know what happened here. I'm in this plan and I didn't want to be, or I'm saving more than I wanted to, that kind of thing. So making sure to communicate effectively on the front end is obviously, in my view, the key, one of the big keys to making this work successfully.
Well, great. And I would like to thank today's presenter, Rick Rouser, for his informative presentation on Pentegra's The 401k Plan of the Future is available today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, Steve Plestak, here at the ABA at 202-663-5577. And that concludes today's webinar, and have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.